From the time Stillwater was first settled, residents and visitors alike were taken with its natural beauty. The St. Croix River was always singled out as one of the region's natural wonders, and early 20th century promotional guides called Stillwater the Queen City of the St. Croix, while pointing out its romantic settings and views that presented a fascinating and delightful picture. Then the railroad came to town. Taking advantage of access to good transportation, industries grew along the river. Northwest Thresher, Twin City Forge, and the Connolly and Foote Schultz shoe companies were among the city's important early 20th century employers. What happened, though, is that the railroad tracks cut people off from the river. The banks of the St. Croix became a wasteland and a dumping ground. Then in the early 20th century, a movement took hold across the country called the City Beautiful, inspired by the 1893 Chicago Columbian Exposition. In Stillwater, several civic leaders took up the cause, led by Mayor J.G. Armson and a newly formed booster club. The key turning point came when the boosters convinced the railroad to donate riverfront land to the city. Quickly, the boosters turned to fundraising and began a campaign with the slogan, "All Together, Stillwater Will." Buttons were sold to raise funds, and in July 1908, a fair was held downtown, with the proceeds going for the new waterfront park. Despite all the work, the project languished until local businessman Elmore Lowell stepped in and donated $5,000. He had one important corollary, that the city must hire a professional landscape architect. They turned to one of Minnesota's best, William Finklenberg. He had already beautified the levee in his hometown of Winona and recently completed work on the waterfront in Red Wing. In 1911, on the eve of the opening of Lowell Park, the Minneapolis Morning Tribune praised the city.
Nature has given to Stillwater many beauty spots that could never artificially be acquired. The thoughtlessness of man in the rush for wealth has left neglected many of the most beautiful places, and rendered unsightly others by using them as dumping grounds. But in this great civic revival which is sweeping the country, Stillwater is having its awakening.
Lowell Park quickly became one of the city's most popular places, as people came for concerts, to take excursion boats, and there was even talk of a waterfront summer festival. It was just a start. In 1916, Stillwater organized its first Parks Commission, and one of its early steps was to acquire the riverfront north of Chestnut Street. This time, they hired Minneapolis landscape architects Anthony Morrill and Arthur Nichols. Nichols was the first graduate in landscape architecture from MIT, and with his partner first came to Minnesota to work on the grounds of the Congdon Mansion in Duluth, known as Glen Sheen. After that, the two men formed a firm that would complete some of Minnesota's most important landscapes, including the state capitol grounds and the University of Minnesota Mall. For Stillwater, they designed a sunken garden for the north side of Lowell Park, with quiet walkways and a central fountain. In 1923, the pavilion was added, paid for by another donation from Elmore Lowell. Morrill and Nichols had bigger plans, though, and proceeded to develop what was called a plan for Stillwater. It was a blueprint for the modern city, really its first planning document, proposing new ideas for parks, boulevards, housing, and riverfront land use. It called for a system of scenic drives linking views of the river valley, and the reclamation of ravines for park purposes. Catching the vision, in 1917, the Eastside Lumber Company donated property on the opposite side of the river to the city for park use. Over the years, this little bit of Stillwater in Wisconsin was used as a tourist camp and a public beach. The site was later named Colliner Park. The grand plan never happened, but the Parks Commission continued to do its work. As Arthur Nichols wrote, Stillwater people have many times manifested their great zeal in doing the right thing for their community. and that still holds true today.